All right, so in this step, we're going to go ahead and we're going to wrap up our navigation. And just to have a peek at where we're at, we can see we want to check our local host, make sure that everything is working as expected. We have the shrinking, we have our footer looks good, shrinking of the header, we have our menu that's drawing out, and our information is dumping over here. Where are we headed? Let's think about that for a minute. Where we're headed is we want to finish up that navigation, and we want to make it so that it collapses and expands on hover and gives us that nice little white menu at the top. So let's go ahead and let's figure out how to do that. At the moment, we're pulling in our JSON menu, and I'm going to go ahead and we're going to do a quick review. We're pulling in our JSON menu, and we're getting it from our menu JSON file, and we're pulling it in, and we have a success and an error function that we learned about, and actually they're methods, because we call anything tucked inside a function tucked inside a function, we actually call that a method then, because it's a sub function to a function, and we just go ahead and we use the terminology method for that. What we want to do is, at the moment, we're saying for each of that top menu, if you can recall, if not, refer back, we're grabbing the top item of each menu item that we find inside that JSON response that we get from the server. So what we're grabbing is we're saying menu, and then we're grabbing the top 4 items. We know our length is 4. We know we start with 0. We know the first one is love, and then the next one is who, and we can see it just has been putting them up there exactly as we would expect. But now what we want to do is we want to be able to drill down and see the rest of those menu items. We have a couple options. We could go absolutely nuts in here with code and create a whole bunch of code over and over and over again, or we can do build a function that will help us build those menu items. So we'll go ahead and we'll get started on that function, and we want to build this function inside here. We want to make sure, let's go ahead and move our window load to the top of the page. Let's start with that. That way it's just sitting up there and it's setting that event listener. It is a conversation came up in class about that, and it is the best place to put it. Sometimes I gotta keep myself from getting too lazy and taking easy shortcuts. We're going to go ahead and we're going to collapse our window event listener function. And for now, let's go ahead and just collapse our AJAX function so that we can just focus on the code that we want to see and that we're looking at. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to build a function called menuBuilder. And of course, this function is going to do exactly what it sounds like. We're going to use this function to go ahead and build out the menu. We'll talk about the parameter here in a moment, but basically that's how we're going to pass that menu in that we get back from the AJAX response. Inside the menuBuilder, we want to go ahead and we want to create a variable that's going to be inside here that we're going to use to create our menu. What we want to do is we want to create this menu, and then we want to return it to whoever is calling it, and that'll make more sense as we go along. But at this point, we just want to make sure that we create that menu, and then what we want to do is we want to take this object that we're passing in, which is merely us passing in this. This is what the object is. At the root, it's an object. You can see that, and then it has objects inside of it. And what we want to do is we want to pass that in, and then we want to be able to iterate over it or loop over it. And we'll do that by using a for each method function. But the first thing that we need to do is just make sure that that object that we're passing in is good. And so what we'll do is we'll do a console.log obj. Let's just dump it out there. And let's hit save. And let's come up here And instead of building the menu anymore, and instead of doing these console logs, let's go ahead and let's just comment them out for now. We'll leave them there in case we want to do something with them later. We'll leave the bad one in, but let's not clutter up our console so that we can see what's going on. So we know that we're checking the length of the menu to make sure that there's something there. And if there is something there, what we're doing is we're telling it to go ahead and pass that information into our for each statement, and we're looping through each of them. Now, because we're going to do that down here, we can go ahead and we can comment these out as well. And let's get rid of the menu builder while we're at it. Additionally, what we can do is we can go ahead and we can comment out the if statement as well. We're basically eliminating all this code because we can do that code down here. And if something happens bad, we can go ahead and we can return that and fail, do what we call a graceful fail. So what we do want to do inside here, let's go ahead and let's just collapse this so it's not in the way of this code. And let's go up here on our success. And we're going to type in a variable and we're going to call it menu. And the reason that we have this variable is we want to capture, when we call the menuBuilder function, we want to capture whatever is returned. What we're passing in as the argument to the parameter is the object. So what we're passing in there is simply what you see here. When we pass this in, it comes in as a variable, as an object, a variable object, and it'll come in here, and we won't use this variable yet, the menu yet, but what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing we were doing up here. We're going to check the length and make sure that there's something there. And what we can do here then is we can say else, meaning if there is not something in there, console.log no data. That way we get some kind of feedback. If nothing happens, we get some kind of feedback. And at this point, we'll go ahead and let's go ahead and just test this. So what we're doing is we're declaring a variable up here, we're calling it menuBuilder, and we're grabbing on the success, we're grabbing the information that we were using to do our menu already, and we're passing it in as an argument to this parameter to satisfy this parameter. Inside the function, all we're doing is right now we're just creating a blank empty variable, and we're going to just let that sit for a moment. What we are going to do is same thing that we were doing up here. We're going to grab this object and we're going to test its length, and if it's greater than 0, that means there's something in it. If it's not greater than 0, then there's a problem, there's nothing in it, or potentially a problem. But as far as this goes, put my semicolon on there. If it is good, we're going to console log the object. So if we go ahead and we hit save, and we come out to our browser, and we do a cache refresh, we can see what happened. It dumped it in. To make it even more obvious for you, why don't we go ahead and say, right before the menuBuilder, why don't we do this so that hopefully it helps you get a better understanding. We can say, calling the menuBuilder function why don't we put this under here and say menuBuilder function complete. That way we can see, right, we're going to write to the console, then we're going to call the menuBuilder, then we're going to write to the console again, and it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But down here in our menuBuilder function, why don't we go ahead and put in another console log And let's just say menuBuilder function starting, and then we'll grab this one and we'll come down here and we'll say menuBuilder function complete. So this should cause some interesting conversation for us to be able to explore. So let's go out and let's refresh it and see what happens with all that. Empty our cache, reload, calling the menuBuilder function, menuBuilder function starting. We get that dump, right? We get the object dump in here. Then we got menuBuilder function complete. And to make it a little more clear, let's put this call to menuBuilder function completed. Hit save. Let's come back out and look again. Empty cache. And pretty much what we expected. So here, we're calling from the AJAX call. We're calling the menuBuilder function. Now we're inside the menuBuilder function. So the function is starting. We told it to go ahead and dump that data out, which it has. It's the same object that we had up in our AJAX call, but now we're just passing it inside of that function. This is just showing our loading of our JSON file. This is after that dump, it's showing that it's complete, and then it picks back up here, call the menuBuilder function completed. And if we look at this, it makes perfect sense. We get the data, it comes in, hits success and says calling menuBuilder function. We call the menuBuilder function here. So at this point, everything ceases in here, and we go out here and we start building our menuBuilder. Comes into the function, says, hey, it's starting, writes the data out. Then it comes down here and says, done. I'm complete, I'm over. Then it picks up back here again and says menuBuilder function completed. And that's exactly what we see in console. So that's pretty cool. So at this point though, one of the things that we want to do is we want to be able to go inside of that menuBuilder function on success, and instead of dumping the object out, what we're going to do is we're going to come inside here. And we know that this is where the code will be executed if there's something to be executed. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to say for each, just like up top when we did that up top. We're going to take our console log and what we're going to tell it is for each, we want to know, and we're going to use item. We're going to pass item in because we're going to break it down into items. We want to know what each item is. And if we hit save, let's clean this up a little just so it's easier to read and view. And let's go ahead and we can see, right, console log. And if we want to, what we can do is say item, just so we have some information, item. And it'll let us know what that item is, and then it'll print that out with it. And at the moment, at for each, if you see I'm getting an error there, that's because I did not close off my for each statement, which should take that off, right? I have to close, there's the braces. And there's the opening and closing of the for each statement. So at this point, if we hit save, we should go out and we should actually see our items get logged in. So let's go do that. Do a cache refresh. And there we can see each item. That's love who challenges you. So we can actually see that we're looping through and we're picking up the items. And if we actually go with item menu name, we'll actually see the item information. So let's do that. And there we can see love who challenges you, and it's looking at each item and it's looping through. It comes in the start of the function, there's the end of the function, and there's after the function call. So that's pretty cool. But now let's say we have these sub items, the submenus that sit below them, and we want to bring them out as well. This is where this thing called recursion comes into play, which is pretty cool. One of the things that we know on the menu items in there is that we have this thing called menus. And if I copy and paste the console log, clean it up, and I just do menus, what we should end up with is another object out there. And so let's go check that out. And you see we have these objects, these menus, right? After you, there's 1, 2. After challenges, there's 1, 2, 1, 2 for love. And the way that we can really kind of bring that home and see that is if we open up our menu JSON, we can see that when we have submenus, we have name and link, which we're pretty familiar with, right? Love, and there's our love link. But then we have these submenus as well. So if you look inside love, there's our link, and then there's our other key value pair, which is menus. But inside of menus, we actually have multiple menus. So in other words, we have love things, and things is a submenu to love, and we have love people, which is a submenu to love. And then inside things, we actually have 4 more menu items tucked into the menu items. So what we want to do at this point, what's pretty cool, is that we can take this menus, right, the menus information that's on the link there, that's in the menu, the submenus. And if I come in here and I say, I make an if statement, and if I say menus, right, item menus length is greater than 0, kind of just exactly what we were doing up there before. What's funny is we can actually, now what we're doing is we're telling it to go ahead, and before moving on to the next item, oops, I didn't want to do that, hang on. What we can tell it is that we want it to call the menuBuilder function again, call itself. This is called recursion. And if you notice, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the item menus, that object, that submenu object down here, and I'm going to feed it back in, and it's going to come up here and start building it again. And if I save that, and I empty cache, all of a sudden we can see all the menu items have been brought out. And the reason that they've been brought out is because what it does is it treats each menu's object as its own object and then comes in and builds it. Recursion can be difficult to wrap your head around, but once you have it, it makes perfect sense. And additionally, it's heavily used in programming. As you can see, it's silly to go ahead and write the write information to go deeper and deeper in. So at this point, we know that we're getting that information. What we want to do is we want to go ahead and we want to start building a menu to return when it's called up here. So our var menu, we're filling up a variable with whatever comes out of this, whatever we build inside of here. So the first thing we want to do, like any list, is we want to open up a list. And so what we're going to tell it is, hey, if object length is greater than 0, we're going to do something with it. And therefore, we're going to take that menu variable that we have, and we're going to concatenate it on to anything that's existing there, and because of our submenus, and we're going to say that we want a UL. What we do know is that after the for each, right? So we're inside our zero, our statement, our code block that's executing if there is something in there. What we also know we want to do is we want to close that list as well. So if we remember, it loops through here and it builds, and then once it's done building, it comes out to here. So at this point, what we can do is we can literally go ahead and close our list. Inside is where we want to build our list of items, inside the for each. So if I come inside here, inside the for each, and I put code, the menu equals, right? Because we're just building, we're just adding on and adding on and adding on. But in this case, now we're actually building the list item, and we're putting that inside of here. And we're adding that list item name, and we'll put the link eventually into here as well. What we have is our list items, but we know in here that if there's submenus, we're going to call the function again. And this is where it can get very confusing, and I'm going to get rid of the console logs for now. Going to clean up my code a little bit. Come back down here. Okay, so what we did is we opened the list item. But what we do know is that before we close a list item, if we're going to put a submenu in it, the closing tag has to be after the submenu, which is why we would choose to come down below the if statement and close the list item. And again, we're just appending, we're just building the list item. We're building a list. And what we need to do at this point is, now that we closed that, what we want to do is we want to make sure that we know every time we call this, it's going to return a list. And so at this point, instead of having the menuBuilder menu items there, we're going to replace that with, again, we're building the menu. So we're saying the menu plus menuBuilder, and we're passing in those submenu items into there. The next thing that we're going to do is we have to return it. We have to give the information back out to whoever's calling and asking for it. So outside of the if statement is where we want to put this return statement. So we have the if statement, that's where all the building goes on, and where we do everything, and if there's no data, we do that. And then in the end, we want to return this, what we have built. And so at this point, if I go ahead and I hit save, and I take a look at my code, it's going to take you a while to really wrap your head around this stuff. And I took all those console logs out. I'm not sure if we left ourselves anything to really see. But what we do see is that the menu has been built. And the way that we can go ahead and look at that menu is we see var menu. So after it's been completed, let's see what it is that we get back from the menuBuilder. We know what we're doing is we're telling this variable, we're establishing this variable, and we're saying, hey, call the menuBuilder, use the data that we got, and when you're done, give me that information so I can use it. So we'll hit save, we'll come out, and we'll do another refresh and take another look. And there you can see our menu has been built. We're dumping out basically raw HTML, and if we take this and we actually break it down inside of Dreamweaver, we'll get rid of all the body tags, we'll dump that in there, and we'll format it. We can actually see that it has built a perfect menu. So at this point, let's go ahead and let's clean up all this commented code out. We don't want that in there anymore. We don't want confusion. So let's go ahead and clean all that out. Let's get rid of our console logs as well. We know that the menu is actually returning the information that we want. Which leaves us with one thing to do with that information, which is to go ahead and, as we did earlier, and actually, let's go ahead and let's undo for a second. You don't have to. I want to grab this so we can actually see. What we were doing earlier is we were telling the nav, we were doing a for each, we were building the menu ourselves up here, and we were telling it to append it to the nav, the pieces, the top 4 pieces. Now what's cool is we can just take all that information that we get back from the function, and we can actually just append it to our nav. So if we go out and we reload, at this point we can see that we have this one object up there because we don't know what to do with it quite yet. If we click on it, you can actually see that it's put the entire everything up in there. And so we end up with our elements, we end up with our sublists. You can see here, you. Awesome. All right, so this video has been long enough, and I think at this point what we're going to do is we're going to check our work in, and then we're going to come back and we're going to wrap up the CSS in a separate video so that we can get a better understanding of everything that's going on. I'll go ahead and here's a good screenshot for you to pause the code. To pause the video and grab the code. And here's a good one for you to pause the code to look inside of our AJAX call. I'm going to clean that up a little. I'm going to hit save. I'm going to go ahead and apply source formatting. Just make sure it's good and clean. Everything is looking nice and clean for us. All right. So what we will do at this point is we're going to go ahead and we're going to do a commit. So we're going to run a git status, and we're going to see that our app.js was things have happened to it, of course, exactly what we wanted. So we're going to do a git add of a git status, and we can see it's in staging. So now we want to do a git commit. And actually, it's kind of silly that I'm doing it this way, but that's okay. Git commit, added menuBuilder function to recursively, not sure if I spelled that right, build the menu and sub menu items. We will complete the styling in the next branch. So let's go ahead and let's go ahead and hit save. Let's do a status. Don't worry about my code, it got a little wonky up there, but we're good. Our commit is in. We can see that it's in. We could do a git log to just double check and make sure, and we can see that my commit is in there and it's good. And so at this point we'll go ahead and we'll create another branch in the next video, and we'll see you in a few minutes.